So today we're working on this. But wait, there's more. Stay tuned. Hi guys, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Michael and I am the woodworker for MK Designs. And yes, I finally got finished with the nightstands. This is the big project I've been talking about for probably close to a year now. The reason it's taken so long to actually get these done is, as most of you know, I have an outdoor shop. I do the best I can with it, but Colorado decided to have an actual winter this year. So we had snow, well below freezing temps, more snow than we've gotten in the past probably 7-8 years. And the spring brought in rain, which, don't get me wrong, we are extremely grateful for all the moisture. The fire danger out here right now is extremely low. We're actually happy about that. But on the downside of that, with all the moisture, I haven't been able to work like I want to. That, along with a few other things, including the fact that Kat decided she wasn't getting enough attention, so she decided to break her foot stepping out of the garden. I laugh because those are her words. That's exactly what she told me to say. But yeah, I had to take some time off to take care of that. Oh, and also my son that joined the Army, he got married. Yeah, so we had to go down to Galveston Island for that, and we had a good time. So yeah, we finally got to the nightstands, and yeah, as I said in the intro, there's more. These are special nightstands. They're mission style to match the customer's existing dresser and chest of drawers. Match, I say they come close because they're mission style as well. However, when the customer came to me, she asked me if I could design and build nightstands with a false bottom. And naturally, I can do that. That's not that big a deal. But I proceeded to ask her what she was wanting to store underneath the hidden drawer, and she explained to me everything that she wanted to do with it and what she was hoping to gain from it and whatnot. And I told her, honestly, your best bet is going to be a hidden drawer. Instead of a false bottom, you have a hidden drawer. So I sat down and I sketched these plans out. I designed them, and I have plans available on my website. I'll put a link to that down in the description. For anybody that wants to build them, the plans are available. So yeah, and we decided on this, and we decided on an RFID lock. So that's what I did. I designed nightstands with a hidden drawer with an RFID lock. And I'll go into it and I'll explain to you how it actually all works. So yeah, let's get to it. So, as most of you probably know, the idea of a hidden drawer is you have your main drawer compartment, and then underneath it you will have another drawer that you have to unlock in order to pull out. Well, with the idea of the RFID lock is this. You have these cards, which I guess I'll take them out of the plastic. Yeah. So you have these cards, and they are programmed to work with the lock. So the way it works, the way I designed these, is you just hide it under there. When you hear the beep, you can pull the hidden drawer out. And as you can see, you've got your hidden drawer here, and up here you still have your main drawer. Now, with these particular RFID locks, the way they work is you unlock it, but before you can lock it back, you have to hear that second beep. And if you leave it open, it will actually make a sound to let you know that it's still unlocked and that there's an issue. It's supposed to also have a low battery indicator, but I have not been working with them or had the batteries on them long enough to actually find out how long that takes or if it actually does work or not. But let me show you how I did all this. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break down my plywood. I got a full 4x8 sheet of 1/4 inch white oak plywood, and I'm going to just break it down to rough sizes just so it doesn't take up so much room and I can move it around easier when I need it. So I'm going to use the Craig AccuCut for this and just run my skill saw across it and get it broke down. Okay, so once I have that done, I am going to start breaking down the pieces for the sides of the cabinet. And a lot of this project is going to be a lot of rinse and repeat. I don't want to cut all the pieces at first. I want to work on one piece at a time, so I'm going to do the sides first, and then I'll move from there. And I'll measure and double check my measurements before I actually make the cuts. But what I'm doing right now is I'm just breaking down these 9-foot long boards down into rough lengths of all the pieces I need for the two sides. And next I'm going to run them over the joiner real quick. I'm going to run one face and then I'll turn them up on their sides and run one edge using the face that I just jointed on my fence to make sure I get that edge and that face perfectly perpendicular to each other. So once I finish running them over the joiner, then I'll run them through the planer and get them down to the thickness that I want, and then I'll make the final cross cuts and rip them down to size and start putting them together. So here I've got them all laid out in the orientation where I want them. I'm going to be using the domino to assemble the sides, and I'm wanting to lay everything out and make sure I mark all my corners so that I put the domino in the right place, and I cut the mortises in the right place. Okay, so these are the back stiles for the sides, and I'm cutting the mortises to fit the back rails for the back panel so that I can get them fitted and get them where they need to go. One thing about using the domino for this is you have multiple size mortises, so you need to make sure you get your depth set for each cut. Double check, triple check, whatever you need to do. You don't want to blow through it. So now I'm cutting the mortises for the side rails, the top and the bottom side rails, to fit them into the stiles. After that, I'll get the mortises cut into the stiles and we'll move from there. Next, I'm going to cut the dados for all the floating panels, the pieces of plywood I cut at the beginning. And to do the rails, it's easy. It's simple. You just cut from one end to the other and it goes all the way through. You don't have to worry about stop marks or anything like that. Now here I'm cutting the dado for the back floating panel on the back stiles for the sides. And the way I'm doing that is I already cut the mortises for the dominoes. So I'm just going from one mortise to the other and cutting through it. I'm only cutting a 1/4 inch in, so it's not going to really affect the strength of the domino or the mortise. And I do this exact same procedure to cut the dado for the side panels in both the front and the back stiles. And here they are all dry fit together with the dominoes. So now while I got them dry fit together, I'm going to go ahead and measure for the side panels, and I'm adding a 1/2 inch to the inside dimensions of the frame in order to compensate for the 1/4 inch dado that I cut. I'm going to get the exact measurements, and then I'm going to get those pieces cut and fit in. So here I'm cutting the plywood pieces for the panels, the sides and the back, and I'm using blue tape to help prevent tear out. There is a video out there that claims to test this and states that using the blue tape doesn't actually help. It's the how good your blade is and some things of that nature that determines whether it tears out or not. However, I have one of the best blades that you can get out there on my table saw. I have a Forest Woodworker 2 40-tooth combination blade, and I did my own test. Now, unfortunately, I didn't film it, but I did my own test. I took a piece of scrap plywood, similar to what I'm cutting right here, and ran it over the saw, cut it with just the blade and no tape on the plywood, and it tore out. Once I put tape on the plywood, the exact same plywood using the exact same blade, making the exact same cut, I had no tear out on the front or the back. And yes, I just realized that from the angle of the camera, it looks like I am reaching directly over the blade to pull these pieces out. I assure you I am not. It's just the angle of the camera. I am well far enough away from the blade for this not to be a safety concern. So once I have those pieces cut, then I'm going to do another dry fit and make sure everything's fitting properly, and then we'll glue it up. While I'm doing this part, I wanted to take a second and thank all of my subscribers. The day that I started editing this video and putting it together, I officially hit 1,000 subscribers. And I could not do this without the support from you guys, and I greatly appreciate every one of you, and thank you so much. If I can get all the details worked out in enough time, then I'm planning on doing a hopefully decent giveaway for hitting 1,000 subscribers. Again, thank you all so very much. Now, before I actually glue all these up, I'm going to go ahead, I've got them dry fit together, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get my measurements for my web frames. And this is one of those things that's going to cause some discussion. Most people would refer to them as dust frames. And what I found out in all my research looking into Mission Style furniture and things of that nature is dust frames are actually a solid piece. They're a frame like I'm going to build, but they also have a center floating panel to collect all the dust, whereas web frames do not have that center panel. Because I'm not going to be putting the center panel in, I'm actually building web frames and not dust frames. Now I can start gluing it all up. So I'm only going to glue up the sides at the moment, but how I'm going to do it is I'm just going to put a little bit of glue down in the mortises, and I'm going to run a small little bead down the dados to hold the plywood in place. Because it's plywood, I don't have to worry about it shrinking and contracting, so I can actually put the glue in, just so you don't get that little rattle that you get sometimes with lower end furniture. And so once I have them in the clamps and the clamps putting pressure on them, I'm going to take a clean rag, wet rag, and wipe off the excess glue. So now while those are drying up and setting up overnight, I am going to rough cut all the pieces for the web frames. And remember how I said in the beginning this was going to be a lot of rinse and repeat, and I'm only cutting pieces as I need them? Well, I got the sides glued up together, so now I can go ahead and get the web frames done, because before I glue the backs to the sides, I actually want the web frames, and I want to glue it all up at one time. So here I'm cutting all the pieces to rough length, and then once again I'll run them over the joiner through the planer, and then I will cut them to exact size on the table saw. Once I get them back over to the table saw, I'm going to make my cross cuts first, and I'm going to do that by cutting off one clean edge and then cutting them to exact length. And then I will rip them to exact width. So once again, I'm going to be assembling the web frames with the domino, so I need to mark where I want the dominoes to go so I can make sure that everything lines up just right, because the pieces are too narrow to actually use the guides on the domino itself. Once I have all the mortises cut, then I will glue it up, and I will glue it up the exact same way I did the side pieces. I'll just put a little bit of glue in the mortises and spread it around, push the tenons in, and then push them all together and clamp them down. And again, I'll let these sit overnight. Now, before I install these and get the backs glued on and get the cases actually completed, I'm going to sand the web frames, and there's a couple reasons for this. One, I want to make sure that everything lines up correctly, so I need them exactly how they're going to be when I go to put them in. And two, they'll be really hard, really difficult to sand once I have them installed. So I'm going to go ahead and sand the insides of the sides, the inside pieces for the back and the front bottom rail, and I'm going to start with 80 just to get everything flat, and then I'm going to go to 100, 150, and 220 if necessary. Okay, so I wanted to do this way instead of trying to do it as a voiceover, just so I can explain it as I go. In order to put the web frames, they're not dust frames, in order to put them in and get them lined up exactly right, normally what I would do is I would just run dominoes all the way across, and that's what I'll do up top. But for the middle one, I only have here and here to be able to put them. So what I need to do is I need to measure where the top of the middle web frame is going to be, and per my measurements it's at 10 5/8 from the top of the, which that's not the top, that's the bottom. So it's 10 5/8 inches from the top of the case. So I'll mark it there, and then I'll get my handy dandy square and draw a line here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get my web frame, and it's going to go in there pretty much like this. So this is going to be the top. So what I'll do is I will lay it down this way. Let me make sure I'm still in frame here. Move it around this way a little bit. There we go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line the front edge up with my mark, and then I'm going to take my square and I'm going to make sure the frame itself is actually square. When I do that, I will mark on this side where that line is. Now, so I'll put a mortise here and on the in the end here, and same over here, here, and here. Now, over here it's simple because the domino has little things on it to be able to mark the edge, and I want this piece flush, so it's simple to do. However, on this side, there's nothing over here to reference against because this is the groove, the dado is too narrow for that little piece to fit into. So what I do is I mark over from the edge of this piece 1.25 inches, and then I will run my square, run my line, and I'll line the domino up with that to put the mortise in there. So let me do that, and then I'll show you how I set it up for the top. Okay, now for the top, it's a little different. You could do it the same way, but you've got the 3/4 inch piece for the back rail that's actually going to separate, set it off a little bit, offset it a little bit. So the best way to do it is just go ahead and put your rail in place. If you're using pocket screws, you could screw it in, or you could try and clamp this piece down. You just want it there. All you need it for is for spacing to get everything set. So what I'm going to do, I'll turn this so you can see a little better. What I'm going to do is I will set the frame in place up against the back rail, and I will flush it up to the top, and then I will take my handy dandy pencil and I'll draw a line over here, and I'll draw a line over here. Now, because I built these the same way, the front here, back it up, I don't know if you can see this or not, but it's overhanging. Now, with Mission Style furniture, you can do one of two things. You can either have everything flush to the front, or you can have the drawers and the either dust frames or web frames and the bottom front rail 1/4 inch offset back. I decided on these to go flush. Now, this is by design. I did this on purpose. I want this because this way I can ensure that whatever my measurements are, I can get this flush with the front when everything's done. So what I'm going to do now is I'll lay this down. I just need to leave this here just for the spacing again, and I will square it up like that with my lines, and then clamp it down and put the dominoes. I'll put one here, 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 and here. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll move on. And now it's time for one more dry fit before I glue everything together, just to make sure everything's going to fit right and I don't need to make any adjustments. Once I have all that worked out, then I can go ahead and glue it up. Put it in clamps and let it sit overnight one more time. And again, I'm just going to run a small little bead down the dados for the floating panel and put a little bit of glue in each of the mortises, spread it around, and put it together, back together the exact same way I did for the dry fit. So I've got a problem, and I've got a solution. I've got these drawer slides. They're 16 inches. They're the size that I need because of the size of the cabinet and all that. And the problem is when I go to mount them, I only have a little bit of surface, so like right about there's where they would go, up here to screw them into, and there's nothing back here. And I've got the camera positioned. I hope I'm going to be able to show all this to you guys. If I have to move it around, I apologize. So I came up with a solution. What I did was I trimmed these, milled these half-inch pieces down from some scraps I had from making the cabinets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to place them right here and glue them in. And then from there, the slides will actually fit on them like that, and I've got plenty of surface to screw into. And yes, they will still hold 100 pounds, because if you think about it, you don't only have the slide holding it, you've got the glue that's holding these pieces in, as well as the web frame holding it in. Now, clamping. Obviously I can't get a clamp in here to hold this in place. So what I've done, and the reason I did this at this point instead of before, is because I needed the cabinet actually put together so that I could get the exact measurements for all of this. So what I did was I've got some pieces of 3/4 inch MDF. I'll put a clamp here, and then I will put this piece in the back, and I cut it just slightly oversized, and I will wedge it in, and that will hold it, that will give it enough clamping pressure for the glue to set. Now I'm going to have to move the camera for this part, so hang on. Now for the bottom, I've got the same issue. You know, I put it in here, and I put the slide in there, and I've got no support because it comes to the same place. But I run into another issue. If I just try to glue this on, yeah, I can get it in there clamped, but trying to get it lined up perfectly, it can be a pain. So what I did for that is I cut these little blocks out of plywood, just a piece of scrap plywood I had laying around. They're the exact same height as the bottom of the cabinet. So I will put those here, put one here, maybe a third one in the middle, and I can set this on top of those, just like that. And then I'll put the MDF in the back, same as I did up top, clamp here, and that solves that problem. I've covered the tops of these with packing tape just so the glue won't stick to them. That way I can leave them sitting in there so that I don't risk these falling down or anything. So that's my next step. So I'm going to glue these in, and I'll let this sit again overnight before I do anything else with it. And I think that's going to be about it for this episode. I'm going to be splitting this video up into at least 2. So the next video will be out in the next day or so, and hopefully it'll only take 2 episodes, but if it takes more than that, we'll get it figured out. And yes, you see mortises sitting there, and yes, I've lined up the domino in the wrong place, and yeah. but they're going to be covered up, so it's not that big a deal. So yeah, that'll do it for this video, and until next time, guys, happy creating.